So the teams are in for Essendon versus North Melbourne on Thursday night at Marvel Stadium. There is one change for the Bombers. There are three changes for North Melbourne. We're going to go through all of it and what it means right now. So North Melbourne, 3 outs. Darcy Tucker, Paul Curtis and George Wardlaw are out. Darcy Tucker was tagging Connor Rosey last week and quite famously didn't have a possession. So it's not really a surprise that he isn't out. I predicted that in the last video I made that he might be an out. Curtis is out with suspension. Look, I think this is a really harsh one. I don't think he deserves to be suspended. The problem with these suspensions is that they are outcome-based rather than action-based. And if you're basing it on outcome, then you can have a perfectly good tackle, which just happens to, cause a concussion. And you've got this guy that's suspended for 3 weeks. Now, you could make a case that he could get 1 week for it. If you're an outcome-based person and you think, well, the guy's suspended, right, go by the outcome, he gets a week. But 1 week maybe I could live with. Although I would prefer no weeks because I'm just not an outcome, but I'm an action-based person. I reckon if you suspended someone based on their action, right, if they had an action that was unacceptable rather than the outcome, I think that would be better. But really, to get 3 weeks is insane. 1 week maybe, but 3 weeks I thought was just absolutely ridiculous. And George Wardlaw is out. That's going to help us. George Wardlaw is a very good midfielder for them, one of their heart and soul players. And I don't know how many of you watched the game against Port Adelaide on the weekend, but he was really good in that game and he kicked a magnificent right foot goal on the wrong side for a right footer to the right hand end of the screen. And he's a real live wire down there. So really, this does advantage the Bombers. North are very much weakened with the loss of Curtis, probably their most improved young forward, and George Wardlaw. For the Bombers, Elijah Tsatas has come in. Dylan Shield has been managed. That's not a surprise. I said that might be a possibility in my last video, and it looks like that's happened. Tsatas has been very unlucky the last couple of weeks. He broke his hand, missed a week, and then he couldn't quite get back into the side. So he's really been on the cusp. He had the 31 possessions and 16 clearances in the VFL in his last VFL game. So he's been pushing hard for selection and he deserves it. Dylan Shield did have that hamstring tightness and coming off the 6-day break, and also the fact that he's, over 30 years old, there's always that possibility that he was going to be managed this week. And I think that's a good decision for him. So if we just look at the North Melbourne team and how they line up, and there are still some very good players in the team. North are actually a pretty good team at stoppages. They actually rank 3rd in the AFL for points from clearance. This was an area that we were pretty good at up until the Collingwood game. We had, I think, up plus 30 clearances or something like that up until the Collingwood game, and then we were smashed in that area by the Pies. They had about 14 more than we did. So that's something we're going to have to get back on track because it's actually one of North Melbourne's strengths. So if we look at North Melbourne from the back line, Charlie Comben, Callan Dawson and Jackson Archer, son of Glenn Archer obviously, Luke McDonald, Caleb Daniel and Tom Powell, Finn O'Sullivan, Luke Davies-Uniacke, Colby McKercher, Dylan Stevens, Nick Larkey, Harry Sheasel. Watch out for Nick Larkey. He's the most accurate kick in the AFL. He had a bit of a shocker last week in kicking for goal, and you know what that means. He will be a dead-eyed dick this weekend. You can be absolutely certain of it after spraying them everywhere last week. The most accurate kick in the AFL is not going to have 2 bad ones in a row. So we've got to make sure he doesn't get the ball, because I'm telling you, if he gets it, he's going to put it through.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Cameron Zerha, Jack Darling and Jacob Constanti, Tristan Zeri, Luke Parker and Jai Simpkin. The interchange of Dersma, Bailey, Scott Hardiman, Phillips and Mailer. They're still a very young team if you look at them. There are some reasonably big name players there towards the end of their careers. Luke Parker, Jack Darling, Caleb Daniel, these sort of players that they've got just to shore up their team a little bit during the off-season just because they're so inexperienced. But really, looking at that team, there are still some good players, but it's a team that we should be able to handle. And I'm going to go through the Essendon team right now. So, first of all, congratulations to Jordan Ridley. Jordan Ridley will be playing his 100th game of football, probably our best defender. Congratulations, Jordan. Andrew McGrath, Ben Mackay and Jordan Ridley make up the full back line. Andrew McGrath, of course, one of our best players last week. Let's hope he can back that up. He's been a little bit of a whipping boy, but, keeping the player he was on, Bobby Hill, to essentially nothing was, absolutely great. And he just needs to back that up and do it again. Mason Redman, Zach Reed and Jackson Pryor across the half-back line. Xavier Dersma, Zach Merritt and Harrison Jones, who maintains his spot in the team. I thought maybe it could have been time for a bit of a run in the twos, but it's harder. I'm telling you, it's harder to get out of this Essendon team when you're in it than it is to get in it. It's like the Australian cricket team sometimes. Once you're in, you're pretty much in. It's very hard to get dropped. So, look, we'll be watching Harrison Jones pretty closely this week. I think he's going to have to perform, but I'm just not confident that, even if he doesn't perform, that he'll get dropped anyway. Brad Scott just doesn't like to make too many changes to the team. Jade Gresham, another one who's been a little bit out of form across the half-forward line. Nate Caddy and Nick Martin. Watch out for Nick Martin. He's my tip for a big game this week. The rumours is he was carrying a little bit of a niggle. That's what some of the insiders have been saying. He's been carrying a little bit of a niggle. But look, he's named in the team, and if you're named in the team, you're 100% as far as I'm concerned. He played poorly last week. He only had the 57 ranking points and played his worst game for the year. I think he's our second best player behind Merritt. So I would predict that Nick Martin, he's my prediction for a big game tomorrow night. Kyle Langford, Peter Wright and Isaac Kako across the full forward line. Todd Goldstein, the evergreen, Ben Hobbs, the improving Ben Hobbs, and the excellent Sam Durham make up the ruck division. And the interchange bench is Elijah Tsatas, Will Setterfield, Archie Perkins, Archie Roberts, and Jai Menzies. And going by Brad Scott's relatively consistent approach to selecting the team, I think you can be nearly 95% certain that Jai Menzies will be the sub. That's pretty much how he rolls. What's interesting, though, is the emergencies. We have three first gamers. Sardell Hooley isn't a first gamer. He's played 3 games, but he hasn't played a full game yet. He hasn't played a game where he hasn't been the sub. But we've got Lewis Hayes, Sardell Hooley, and Archer Day-Wick. So it just leads me to think, is someone in the back line potentially carrying a bit of a niggle? Because Lewis Hayes has been playing very well in the twos. The issue with getting him in the seniors is, who does he replace? You've already got Ben Mackay down there. You've got Zach Reed down there. You've got Jordan Ridley. You can't really have 4 talls down there. So the fact that he's been named as the first emergency is kind of interesting because, in terms of team structure, it wouldn't really make sense for him to come into the side. But if there's someone to come out, maybe it will be one of those tall defenders. We don't know. I don't know. That's just a guess. I just find it a bit unusual that he's been named as the first emergency instead of Sardell Hooley, and Archer Day-Wicks is the third emergency. So will there be a late out? That will be interesting to see. So there are the teams. We're really going to have to up our pressure game on the weekend. We've had a lot of uncontested marks this season, but part of the problem is we've let our opponents have almost just as many, and that's not good. In fact, North Melbourne's last couple of opponents have kept them really low in that particular stat, which means you're always under pressure. Yet we allow our opponents to have a lot of uncontested marks. We did it against Collingwood last week, which means that our opponents essentially have a lot of easy possessions. So really, we've really got to turn the pressure up in this game. They're a young, inexperienced team, and if we put the pressure on them and really pressure the ball carrier, then that should thwart their clearance game, which is one of their strengths, and we should get over the line, especially with North with a bit of a weakened team there. So what do you guys think of the team? Leave a message in the comments. What would you have done? Do you agree with the selection? Personally, I would have taken Jones out, and I would have loved to have seen someone like Zach Johnson come into the team. Some say he's not ready, but I'm a kind of, look, play him and see, right? Play him and see. What have we got to lose? We're not going to be winning the premiership this year anyway, and sometimes you can be surprised. You don't think someone's ready, and then they come into the senior team and they adapt to the, level of football that they're playing at. And someone like Zach Johnson, I think, could potentially do that. I'm sort of more of a risk taker, and I gather from some of the comments I've read, on my channel, that a lot of you guys are too. I'm a bit more of a risk taker in how I'd like to see the team selected, and just like to see, how it goes. If someone's playing well, reward them, and if someone's not playing well, drop them. Not as a punishment necessarily, but just drop them just to, get their form back and just to get their confidence back in the twos. That's really why I'd like to see Jones just have a couple of weeks, in the reserves. I don't want to drop him forever, but just get his confidence back and see if he can have a couple of big games and get him in there. And I'd love to see someone like Zach Johnson into the side. I don't know why he's not one of the emergencies. I mean, I rate Lewis Hayes. I think Hayes has had a really good couple of weeks in the VFL, but who's he going to replace? Who's Hayes going to replace? Unless, like I said, one of those players in the back line is out or is going to be coming out. So we'll see. So anyway, everybody, what do you think of the team? Let me know in the comments. Are you going to be going to the game? I will be there as always. It'll be about game number 533 or something, but who's counting? I'll be there. So hopefully the Bombers can get a big win. Have a great day, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe as always. And go Bombers.